So we're going to start with a little bit of meditation in silence. We're going to do 10 minutes of meditation. We're going to divide it into 3 parts. I presume the majority of you know this meditation. And if not, it's very simple. So the first part, for about 3 minutes, we just watch the breath. Try to remain present in the moment, in our body, in our mind, in the here and now, and just observe the breathing process, breathing in and breathing out. So try to make sure our concentration is on the object, on the breath, and when distractions arise, recognize them as distractions and let them go. And maintain our concentration on the breath. So this meditation, so simple, basic, something really useful. In fact, every meditation that we do should begin with this practice, because it's a very effective method to calm the agitated mind, to calm the dispersive thoughts, the different worries and thoughts we might have in our mind. Just by watching the breath for a while, we can find a little bit of peace. We can rest our mind. Rest our mind from that constant agitated state. And it's the best preparation we can do before carrying out any kind of spiritual practice. So when you hear the singing bowl, the gong, we'll do this meditation, watching the breath. Then when you hear the singing bowl for the second time after 3 minutes, in this part, the second part, so for those of you who have experience in this, we can visualize the Buddha in the space in front of us and imagine that it is our teacher and this radiant golden body radiates light and fills us with inspiration, peace. And through this part of the meditation, we concentrate on that visualization, this body of light, Buddha's body of light. And we visualize the light rays purifying us, eliminating completely all of our negative aspects. So in this part, we can bring to mind everything that complicates our life. Problems we might have, physical problems or difficulties, pain or worries, money problems, economical problems or worries, or it might be relationship problems with the family, with our partner, various conflicts we might have, any kind of negative aspect, any aspect of our life which causes us suffering. Think in this part of the meditation, visualizing Buddha's body radiating light. We think that all of our problems are completely eliminated. So in the second part, we try to do this meditation. If we're not familiar with visualizing Buddha, we can just imagine a sphere of light. A light which, just by imagining that presence, fills us with peace and purifies us completely, cleaning away any negative aspects of our mind, our life. So this is a method We're imagining light, imagining this purification process, but it's something very effective for eliminating whatever problem, whatever type of problem we might have. It's a very powerful practice and very effective. So even if it's only just a few minutes, we'll try and do the second part. And then when again you hear the sound of the singing bowl, in the final part, in the third part, Buddha's holy body of light dissolves into us through the crown of our head and comes down and dissolves into our heart. Purifies us completely. And we imagine that our body and mind become a body of light. And then after we visualize ourselves with this body of light, we radiate light in all the directions of the universe to all sentient beings. Like a powerful lamp radiating from our heart in all directions. Sorry. So we can think about our close ones, relatives who are going through difficult experiences. We can think of all beings in all parts of the world which are suffering. And imagine that this light radiating from our heart alleviates their problems, alleviates their suffering. In the same way we thought of our problems, the things which are affecting me in my life, in that earlier part that we purified our own problems, now in this part we think of others who the same as us, individually experiencing all types of problems. Problems of illness, worries, conflicts of all types, internal, external, conflicts with society, with others. So in this third part, we radiate light from our hearts. Previously we purified ourselves, now we open our heart and radiate light to others, purifying them. And generate faith that through this practice, through this enlightened energy, all sentient beings are purified, cleaned from every type of problem. So we can start imagining like a bubble of light around us and think of the beings close to us in this place and how that light purifies them, reaches them, blesses them, and then slowly, slowly extend that further and further away from us, encompassing slowly, slowly all beings. So this practice is quite simple, and it's something if we're interested in doing, we can easily do, and it's very effective for eliminating whatever problem or conflict we might have in our life. So even if it's only 10 minutes, we can try and do this practice. As we're going to do the whole meditation in silence, it's easy that it's possible that the mind could become distracted. It could happen that we reach the end of the meditation after 10 minutes and our mind's just been daydreaming. So from the start, we should develop a strong determination to try and concentrate on this meditation. direct our attention to these three parts. And then when we hear the gong, first part, follow the breath, 3 minutes. Second time we hear the gong, visualize Buddha in the space in front of us, purifying us. 3 minutes concentrating on the body of light. And then finally, in the third part, when we hear the gong, visualize from our heart radiating out to others this golden light. So we're the lucky ones to be here now and have this opportunity to do this practice together. So it's an amazing opportunity. So we should try and do the best we can. So try not to be distracted. So just make sure we're sitting in a good meditation posture, relaxed body posture, with a straight back. And keep our mind in the present moment, in the here and now. So we try to do the best we can. Now, with a calmer state of mind, generate an altruistic motivation, thinking to benefit all sentient beings who are numberless, like space. I have to achieve the state of Buddhahood. I have to achieve that enlightened state, free from any obscurations. A state in which I've developed the maximum potential of all positive qualities, with the power to be able to help all different sentient beings. So in order to do this, I will practice the teachings of our teacher, in particular Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So now I'm going to try and go through some of the parts of some of the key points of the teachings yesterday and comment on these. And then if there's any questions or doubts, or if there was some part of the teaching yesterday that you didn't understand or you want to ask a question about, we can try and do that. So going over a few of the points from the transcripts from yesterday's teachings, I've highlighted a few phrases. So Rinpoche started by talking about refuge. So I'm just going to go through these points briefly and comment over some of them. So firstly, Rinpoche mentioned refuge, and thanks to going for refuge, the blessings we receive, we can see reality exactly as it is. This is the benefits of going for refuge. Going for refuge correctly, our mind, our consciousness opens, it clears, and we can discover what we need to see, what we need to realize. The fact that we don't see the reality as it is the cause of all our problems. So going for refuge, thanks to this refuge, it's through these blessings from going to refuge that we can discover ultimate reality. Then Rinpoche spoke a little bit about the 3 types of suffering and how the practice of refuge can help us to eliminate these 3 types of suffering, which includes everything. Then Rinpoche spoke about the Heart Sutra, which is the essence of all the Buddha's teachings. And it's through reciting this sutra that we receive the blessings of all the Buddha's teachings, which is that correct view of seeing how things exist. Then Rinpoche mentioned our wrong view, our mistaken view of how we perceive ourselves, this grasping at the I, the way that we perceive ourselves is in fact the root of all problems. Rinpoche said that all suffering comes from the mind. So this is something we hear often, but it's an affirmation we have to analyze and to think about again and again. The fact that everything we experience, all of our problems, all of our suffering, is something created by mind, by consciousness. Rinpoche mentioned that what people usually do in the world isn't enough. Everybody wants happiness. Everything we do, study, work, traveling, all the activities we do in the world are directed towards achieving happiness. But the method, the worldly method, the ordinary method to find or to achieve this happiness is not enough. However much effort we put into these worldly or ordinary activities, it's not enough to achieve lasting happiness. So we have to do something more. And that something more is the practice of meditation. Something else Rinpoche mentioned was that any negative action, any negative karma, any mistake, error that we can commit can be purified. All negative actions, which eventually are going to bring their consequences, suffering, these karmic seeds, which we carry in our mental continuum, we can eliminate, we can destroy before they give rise to their result. Rinpoche mentioned the importance of practicing compassion. So Buddha has equanimity. His love and compassion is equal towards all sentient beings, without discrimination. It doesn't matter if they're beings which help him or harm. It doesn't matter if they're beings which criticize or praise. The love and compassion of the enlightened ones is impartial. Rinpoche mentioned that reality is like a dream. It's really important to practice this view that reality is in fact like a dream. So Rinpoche quoted from the land room, from Lama Tsongkhapa's land room. Quotes which emphasize the point that the way we perceive things in reality is not so solid, not so concrete. It's like a dream. So that was some of the key points which I picked out from the teachings from yesterday. So if there was any other points or something else that Rinpoche mentioned that's interesting or something you want to comment on, we can do that at the end. So in the beginning, Rinpoche said, I would like to pay homage to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. And by this, emphasized the practice of going for refuge. Refuge is the door, the entrance to Buddhism. So when we say refuge is the door, when we develop this attitude, this is the route to the path to enlightenment. Without going through this door, there is no other door. There is no other door that can lead us to enlightenment. The practice of going for refuge the causes are, on one hand, realizing that our life is not perfect, that we are not in control, that we have to experience, even though we don't wish for countless problems and suffering, sickness, etc. So we need to recognize this in our lives, recognize the fact that our life is not perfect and that we don't have the capacity to free ourselves, to overcome this suffering, this reality. So we need to do something to escape this state, this imperfect state. Then we need to examine the qualities of the three jewels, the object of refuge, and come to realize that this is an effective method to overcome our life problems. So this is what refuge is, in essence, these 2 points. Generate fear of suffering, recognize the reality that our life is full of imperfections, and develop the wish to want to find some solution. And then to develop the confidence, the strong confidence that Buddha, Dharma, Sangha is relying on the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha is an effective method to escape suffering. So this point is not something we really have to force, or it's something natural. All sentient beings wish to avoid suffering and want to be happy. So the only difference now is to realize that the effective method to achieve it is through going for refuge in the three jewels. So just briefly mentioning Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, we have the external refuge, which would be Buddha Shakyamuni, our teacher, who transmits the teachings. Dharma is the instructions given by Buddha Shakyamuni, the teachings. And thirdly, the Sangha would be the practitioners, those beings who have experience in the path. So this would be the external refuge, the person that guides us, inspires us, his or her teachings, instructions that we put into practice, and those practitioners who help us and accompany us. This is the external refuge. Now, internal refuge. The internal Buddha is our own potential to achieve enlightenment, which is the ultimate nature of mind, that pure state, free from any veils, free from any obscurations. That is our true nature. So the external Buddha helps us connect with our own Buddha nature. So internal Dharma would be our own actions, our own practice. However many teachings we listen to, however many instructions we receive, if we don't practice them, we won't change. It won't change our life. So the Dharma, which is going to really cause a change in our life, a change in us, is our own practice. When we abandon negative actions, cultivate positive actions, and carry out these instructions internally within us, this is the object of refuge, of Dharma, or the jewel of Dharma, the jewel of the interior Dharma. And the interior Sangha is our capacity to develop love and compassion to all sentient beings equally. If we develop this capacity to love all sentient beings, this is the best company. This is our best friend or companion on the path. So briefly, this was a little bit about the three jewels, external and internal. As Rinpoche mentioned, refuge is the door to realizing the different aspects of the path. So by sincerely practicing going for refuge, we receive blessings, which can ripen this potential within us. And it's through receiving these blessings that we can begin to see reality as it is. So the meaning of our life, the meaning of our practice, is to develop this wisdom that realizes how things exist. The Buddha, as Lama Zopa mentioned yesterday, all the teachings he gave was with this objective in mind. So the Buddha gave 84,000 instructions or advice to eliminate 84,000 obscurations. So in brief, all these teachings, 84,000 teachings of the Buddha, are all to eliminate delusions. And all these delusions can be divided into ignorance, attachment, and hatred. So all these 84,000 teachings, 21,000 of these are antidotes to desire and attachment. And then there's 21,000 which are antidote to hatred, and 21,000 which are the antidote to ignorance. And then the other 21,000 would be the antidote to the three afflictions. Every problem we experience, whatever problem, comes from these three poisons: attachment, desire, hatred, and ignorance. So from these rise all the wrong views, all the mistaken attitudes. When our mind is under the control of delusions and we create negative actions, we create karma, and then these actions bring as their result suffering in this life, and the next life, and the next life, again and again, trapped in this vicious cycle. Buddha gave these 84,000 teachings to eliminate these three afflictions in our mind: attachment, hatred, and ignorance. So the sutras, the Perfection of Wisdom sutras, are within the teachings of Buddha what explains the meaning of how things exist. So in Sanskrit, the word shunyata, in Tibetan, tompanyi, and in English, emptiness. Emptiness is a term that refers to this ultimate reality that perceives the mind, which is completely pure. When the mind or the consciousness is clean, clear, and has the capacity to perceive phenomena exactly as they exist, that reality is emptiness. So this is the subject of all the wisdom, perfection of wisdom sutras. So Rinpoche mentioned yesterday there's a version with a version of 12 volumes. The extensive version, the Sutra, the Perfection of Wisdom, in 100,000 verses. And there's the Sutra, the Perfection of Wisdom, in 20,000 verses. And then there's the abbreviated version, which is the Sutra of the Wisdom Perfection in 8 verses. So the extensive has 12 volumes, the medium version 2, and the shorter one just 1 volume. And then finally the shortest version, which is the Heart Sutra, which we recite at the beginning of the teachings. As Rinpoche said yesterday, reciting the Heart Sutra, which yesterday we didn't manage to finish or complete, but Rinpoche said that just reading the sutra, just once, leaves positive imprints in our mind, leaves a seed in our mind, even though we don't understand what we're reading. Through the blessings of the Buddha, through the power of the word of Buddha, the speech of Buddha, just by reciting or listening to the Heart Sutra, leaves a seed in the mind which will arise sooner or later, an experience of this ultimate reality, a direct experience of emptiness. So this is the objective of the path, the teachings of the Buddha. All the teachings of Buddha have as their main objective, either directly or indirectly, the development of this wisdom that realizes emptiness. There is no other way to eliminate suffering. If our consciousness perceives phenomena exactly as they exist, we can perceive this emptiness, then we won't suffer. But whilst our mind is obscured, whilst our mind is under the control of ignorance, we have these agitated mental states, these delusions arising in our mind, causing us again and again to commit negative actions and then experience their consequences, suffering. So the way to escape this vicious cycle is by developing wisdom. So it's very important to understand this. Our mind, our consciousness has the ability to see and perceive phenomena clearly, without error. If the case is that right now we can't, we're not able to perceive reality, it is because our mind is obscured. We have these veils. But it's like having clothes which are dirty, if we put them in the washing machine with washing powder, it's possible to rid ourselves of these stains, of these delusions. So it's important to see this, that our mind, whilst it is stained, why it has these stains, is obscured, there's no way we can experience happiness. There's no way we can escape from suffering. There's no way to escape the vicious cycle of birth and death. So I understand that these stains are something temporary, they are not the nature of our mind, and that they are possible to eliminate, to clean completely. So all the teachings of the Buddha talk about this ultimate reality, either directly or indirectly. The goal of all the Buddha's teachings is to realize ultimate reality. And sentient beings, all sentient beings have the capacity to do this. Right now, with this precious human rebirth, with all these perfect conditions, we have an amazing opportunity, if we know how to use it to the best of our ability. We have the conditions to be able to develop this wisdom. And this is what the Heart Sutra is talking about. Reciting it, contemplating it, just listening to the Heart Sutra, we are placing a seed in our mind to be able to perceive emptiness in the same way that Buddhas perceive phenomena. So the Heart Sutra explains directly emptiness, and indirectly it explains the stages of the path to this experience. So directly, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras are talking about emptiness. Indirectly, they explain the stages of the path from beginning to end. And all the other teachings of the Buddha, whatever subject, whatever the, teaching within the three vehicles, have the goal to develop that wisdom that perceives emptiness. Sometimes they're preliminary practices, sometimes they're conditions to purify, to prepare the ground, so to speak, to prepare the consciousness to have this experience. But they're all directed to that. So that's why the Heart Sutra is so important. That's why we recite it. And even if the meaning is something very profound, it's not easy to understand, we can just simply begin by reciting it. Just merely reciting the words, and have faith that by this we're planting a seed on our mind to at some stage in the future have this experience. Rinpoche then spoke of the three types of suffering. Probably you've heard teachings on this. Probably you're familiar with these three types of suffering. So the first type of suffering, the suffering of suffering, which is the evident suffering, the obvious suffering in the world. Everybody, all the people, all the beings, animals, can recognize this painful situation. When we experience hunger, when we experience cold, whatever physical discomfort, or mental suffering. This is like gross, evident suffering that we can all recognize. So this type of suffering is called the suffering of suffering. We go for refuge in order to protect ourselves from the suffering of suffering. The second type of suffering, which is what we call the suffering of change. The majority of beings don't recognize this as suffering. In fact, it is what we normally conceive as happiness. In fact, whatever pleasure we experience, eating, sleeping, having sex, whatever sensory pleasure that we can become attached to, which we see and perceive as something as attractive and pleasant, in time, it will change into suffering. When we start to eat, we feel pleasure. But if we continue eating and eating and eating, the same action, the same object, the same food, it will become something very unpleasant. It will become suffering. The suffering of change is whatever type of pleasure we experience based on contaminated objects. Objects which appear due to karma and delusion, mundane objects. Whatever mundane pleasure we experience in relation to these is contaminated, in reality is suffering. In reality, even if they appear as pleasant, in the beginning it appears as happiness, but it will change. It is really just the fact that one state of suffering has changed into another state of suffering. That's why we call it the suffering of change. If we don't investigate, if we don't analyze this, it is something not easy to understand. It's not something we can easily perceive. If we're honest, most of our time is taken up looking for these experiences of suffering of change. Believing it as happiness, believing it as something pleasant. If we analyze this, we can begin to see that these experiences change. If it was real happiness, real pleasure, then the more we experience it, the more happiness we should achieve. But we can see, if we analyze, the effect is the opposite. So it's good to analyze and reflect on this in our lives. These things that we label pleasure and happiness, sooner or later, bring suffering, bring problems. So it's really necessary to contemplate this point, to be able to reduce our desire and our attachment. And to be able to direct our time and energy into something more meaningful than in pursuit of suffering experiences. The third type is even more difficult to understand. So Rinpoche mentioned this third type, Kyaduche, all-pervasive suffering. The fact that our mind and our body, this physical body or this mind that we have right now, are the result of karma and delusion. It is the result of contaminated actions in the past. So whilst we have this body, this mind, stained by karma and delusion, there's no way we can avoid suffering. So whilst our mind is deluded with these veils, and whilst our mind is contaminated by these negative imprints, then we'll be trapped in this state, in this suffering, all-pervasive suffering. If we want to achieve a lasting state of happiness, free from all suffering, it's necessary to realize this third type of suffering, to recognize it as something undesirable, to recognize the defects or the disadvantages of all pervasive suffering. This encompasses the 5 contaminated aggregates, the body and mind that we have now. Recognize our current situation as a product of that karma and delusion, of contaminated causes. So whilst we have this contaminated body and mind, there's no way we can avoid suffering. So to free ourselves from these 3 types of suffering, Buddha gave us all these teachings, in particular, the perfection of wisdom teachings. Rinpoche said the root of all suffering, the root of samsara, is the wrong way we perceive the I. The fact that our mind, our consciousness, due to past imprints, imprints of karma and delusion, we perceive reality as distorted. So on this basis of our body and our mind, we perceive an I. But we perceive an I in a mistaken way. The fact that our mind is obscured due to the fact that we don't see things clearly, we take as reference our body and our mind, and we believe there is an I that exists inherently from its own side. So that I appears as something confused. It appears as something existing from its own side, has its own existence. So our mind grasps at this I, this mistaken I, and believes it to be real. So if we're in a dark room, so if there's clothes hanging in the window and there's a bit of wind, there may be a shadow cast on the window and we perceive a person. Something moving there in the window that we believe is a person. So it's due to those conditions. Maybe the room is a bit dark. Maybe we're in a place we're not familiar with, we're a little bit scared. We see something move, a shadow that moves. Immediately, we think, oh, there's someone there. And we feel afraid. We believe there's a person there, when in reality, there's no one there. It's just the conditions, the light, the lack of light. Maybe the moon, maybe there's a full moon outside and casting a shadow on these clothes that are hanging in the window. All these conditions produce the effect that we perceive a person there, a real person, and we feel afraid. So in reality, there's nobody there. In reality, there's not a person there. But our mind labels person outside, and it produces within us fear. So that person which is causing us to feel fear, in reality, is a projection of our mind. It's our obscure mind. We feel afraid, maybe we're alone, we see this shadow, and we think, oh, someone's coming to attack me. This enemy that we perceive is a pure figure of our imagination. There's nobody coming to attack us, there's nobody out there. It's just our mind projecting. So, if we analyze, it's just these conditions coming together. External conditions, lack of light, darkness, these different objects, maybe the full moon, the light of the moon, the moving clothes in front of the moonlight, the shadow that's produced. And then our own internal state, we're alone, we feel a bit afraid, agitated mental state, all these conditions, external and internal, come together, allows our mind to label. Not only that, we label and then we believe it to be real. So here we need to analyze the wrong concepts that we have, the grasping at a false eye. Since beginning this time, due to a lack of clarity, due to this obscured mind, we take as reference our body, physical body, and our mind, and we label something which in reality doesn't exist. In the same way, in this analogy of the moving clothes, the shadow, etc., the eye we perceive in exactly the same way. If we sit down and analyze with a calm state of mind, an eye that exists inherently from its own side is something which we made up. There is no inherent existing eye from its own side. It's completely false. However, it appears to our mind as something real. And then we believe it, we accept it. And then from that, we act. We have this dualistic view of attachment and aversion. Grasping at this false I, we try and find happiness and satisfaction. We try to please this false I. And this gives rise to attachment, desire, attachment to mine. And everything that we believe is pleasant and attractive, that pleases this false I. So we grasp at all this. We grasp at this I as something distinct, something different to others. So we feel attachment to everything that pleases our false I, and then aversion to anything that can attack it, or anything that our false I doesn't like. So we perceive a truly existing I, we grasp at it, we believe it 100%, and then from that ignorance, all the delusions arise. Always looking for the best for this I, and then generating aversion, rejecting anything which goes against this false I's wishes, and all the other various delusions arise, such as pride, jealousy, greed. And under the control of all these delusions, we create actions with our body, speech, and mind, and we plant the seeds to experience suffering. Sooner or later, in this life, or the next life, or the one after that, we're going to experience the result of suffering. All the problems that we experience come from this wrong concept, this wrong view. This might appear as some abstract or sophisticated philosophy, something complicated. What it emphasizes is the fact that we have to know who we are, to know how I exist. So meditating on the emptiness of the I, we try to find the true way in which we exist, to recognize that. And it's something which, if we have interest right now, if we put energy, we put effort into this, we direct our intelligence, if we use the teachings that we've received from our teachings, and we analyze, investigate, we do this, we carry out this interior work, we have all the necessary conditions to understand clear what exists and what doesn't exist. So all these philosophical teachings which talk about the I, the emptiness of the I, it's not just like mere intellectual debate, talking about theories, sophisticated, complicated theories. They're all instructions to carry out this interior work, to contemplate, who am I? How do I exist? To realize we have so many false judgments. We are so biased. And we have so many conflicts and problems, which in reality the only way to overcome is by doing this analysis. All the teachings, all the instructions are to do this, to meditate in the emptiness of the I. All these different techniques, the main goal is to have this experience. And this experience is something we can only achieve if we put effort. It's impossible that the Buddha comes along or a Lama comes along and just gives us this realization of emptiness. When we talk about receiving the blessings of the Lama, or blessings of the Buddha, what it means is blessings to practice, blessings to put into practice the teachings on refuge, analyze the teachings, meditate on the teachings, reflect on them, and also to make petitions to the Buddhas, the enlightened beings, to be able to make a change within ourselves. But the real blessings come when we put effort into the practice. When we meditate, analyze, reflect on the teachings that we've received, try to understand them, and those which we do understand, the ones we see clear, that we can put into practice, it is through that practice that we will receive the blessings. So if we really practice refuge, our mind receives the blessings of the Buddhas. It's like a light is lit up within our mind. And we'll be able to begin to understand the teachings of the Buddha. So the emptiness of the I is really just the development of the wisdom which begins to see how I exist and how I don't exist, the wrong way we perceive as existing. So if we talk about this to someone else, a normal sort of person, they think, well, why bother? I've got a lot of problems, I've got a lot of more important things to do. What's the point of sitting down and analyzing these difficult philosophical points of view? But the meaning of all this is the meaning of this is that all suffering comes from our mind, and the goal is to overcome the suffering from within our mind. That's why we meditate. Every undesirable experience we create ourselves. Our mind creates it because we don't perceive reality as it is. So until we begin to shine the light of wisdom within our mind, there's no way we can escape the darkness of ignorance, delusion, and experience of suffering. So as Rinpoche said yesterday, the worldly activities aren't enough. It is not sufficient. In general, the worldly methods, the work, the effort that people put into in education to achieve a good job, a nice place to live, nice company, holidays, looking after our health. We put so much effort into this. If we observe society, since we're born until now, we're just dedicating so much time and energy into this. And all this work, all this energy we put into this is really only just to be happy in this life. And as Rinpoche said yesterday, it's not enough. Because however much wealth, however much material goods or whatever education we can receive, even if we manage to achieve a very sophisticated life, it's not enough. It's not going to give us that satisfaction that we're looking for. So however much success you have from the mundane point of view, rich, wealthy, perfect health, we live in a lovely, wonderful place with wonderful company, we know that it's not enough. It's not sufficient to have a mind that is truly happy, truly satisfied. So all the effort that we put into a normal, mundane life is not enough. We need to dedicate time and energy to meditation. So meditation is to begin to realize that our mind has potential. And it's much more important to put time and energy into an internal path. So in the world we can see there's so many people who have achieved success. Rich and famous people with good reputation. If we analyze, we can see that they're not free from suffering. However much wealth they have, however famous they are, their lives are full of complications and suffering. So this fame, this reputation, this wealth is not enough. So in our life, we can analyze and come to the conclusion that even if we achieve these mundane goals, it will never be enough to find lasting satisfaction. So we need to find time to practice meditation. All happiness and all suffering is created by the mind. And whilst we don't dedicate time to take care of our mind, and if we don't dedicate time to purify our mind, there's no way we can escape suffering. So in a way we need to do some kind of reparation work on our minds. So even if we achieve all types of mundane happiness, there's something which is not right, there's something which is not working properly. And that something is our mind. So we need to repair our mind. That's what we need to fix. To fix this machine, to fix this mind. So the way to fix our mind is through this interior work, meditation, spiritual practice. Whatever negative karma we accumulate, it can be purified. This is another point Rinpoche mentioned yesterday. So negative karma, there's nothing really good that we can say about negative karma, but it does have one positive aspect, and that is the fact that it can be purified. So this is something we need to contemplate seriously. Everything we don't want to experience and we know that can happen to us at any time, sickness, death, maybe the death of a close one, things which we're observing that are happening all the time. If we stop and think, this can happen to me. And this doesn't happen just by chance. It doesn't happen without cause. It doesn't happen because there's a superior being who decides you're going to suffer, you're going to have happiness. So all these unpleasant experiences that happen every day to all beings is due to karma. And that we right now have a sack of these negative karmic seeds on our mental continuum. So it's something we need to take very seriously. If we have real fear of suffering, if it's something we really want to avoid, if we know that this can happen to us any time, today or tomorrow, and we understand that in my mind I have a sack of these negative karmic seeds which are going to give rise to these unpleasant experiences which I don't wish for. So right now, if I'm carrying a sack of these and I can do something to get rid of them, burning these karmic seeds, eliminating the possibility that they manifest, then it's something really worthwhile doing. So if we analyze the Buddhist teachings on karma, Lama Zopa Rinpoche's teachings on the law of karma, the law of cause and effect, we can start to see that it is my mind which creates suffering. It is my mind which creates these negative seeds which are going to give fruit to unpleasant experiences. So it's something we need to think about seriously. So Rinpoche said yesterday, there's no negative karma that can't be purified. So before it gives rise to its result, suffering, the quality that all negative karmic actions have is that they can be purified. So now we have these perfect conditions. We have time, we have interest, we have these techniques, these tools we can put to use to develop our mind. We have everything that we need. And we've still got this sack of negative karmic seeds. Well, now's the time. Now's the time to put effort into purifying our mind. So if I live in my house and I have my house completely messy or dirty, complete disaster, there's nobody who's going to come along and clean my room and tidy up my house. It's my house, or it's my room, so it's my job. We can't expect someone else to come along and do it for us. So this is my life, this is my mind, my consciousness. If my consciousness is full of these negative imprints, these negative karmic seeds, there's no one else outside of us who's going to come along and clean it up, or come along and fix it. These conditions that we have now, these interior conditions we have to be able to do this, is something very rare and something which isn't going to last forever. And these conditions that have come together now, it's not something that are going to be around forever. So Rinpoche was saying it's very worthwhile to put effort into this practice of cleaning our mind, this practice of purification. Then about purification, there's a lot of teachings, a lot of methods. And in general, any Dharma practice is a method of purification, a way of purifying the mind. So this is something worthwhile thinking about. Right now we can do this cleaning process. We can purify our minds and avoid lots of undesirable suffering experiences in the future. Rinpoche spoke about the importance of patience. So in our lives, there's normally someone, or sometimes more than one, person that creates problems for us. A person which makes our life difficult. So Rinpoche mentioned it is precisely this person, the object of our patience, who can really help us in the spiritual path. It is this person who can help us purify our negative karma. That person which behaves in a negative way with us, causes us pain, or any type of unpleasant experiences. We should try and see this in the opposite way that we normally perceive the situation. Normally when somebody causes us problems or pain, we perceive that person as someone hurting us and something we need to liberate ourselves from. The practice of patience is to see that the person which is causing us harm is giving us the opportunity to practice patience. Without that person, we wouldn't be able to practice patience. That person is causing us harm because we have created the causes to experience that harm. That suffering that we experience is a result of our own karma. And it's an opportunity to use up that negative karma, to purify it. So through experiencing this suffering, in a way it's like we free ourselves from having to experience that negative karma in the future, and that is thanks to that person, that enemy. From the Dharma point of view, this person is benefiting us exactly the same as our teacher, the person which gives us the opportunity to practice patience, the person which causes us to use up our negative karma is helping us in exactly the same way as our spiritual teacher. So we should see that person as benefiting us, and instead of developing aversion, we should develop compassion. Why? Because they're helping us, and they're creating, if they're causing us harm, they're creating suffering for themselves. So we should feel compassion for them. On the one hand, they're helping us, and then also on the other, they have to experience suffering. So if we let our mind follow the attitude of attachment and aversion, we just return the harm that they cause us, all we do is to create more negative karma. And create the cause to experience more suffering. However, if we develop patience and compassion, then we can see this person in a different light. So later Rinpoche mentioned the need to develop love and compassion without discrimination. And the fact that the Buddha has this universal love and compassion towards all sentient beings without discrimination. In exactly the same way, even towards beings who cause harm. So Buddha's sitting down and someone comes over, and on one side they're offering essential oils and showing great respect and admiration, and on the other side of Buddha's body they're criticizing, attacking, cutting away his arms, his legs, his limbs. Buddha's attitude, Buddha's love and compassion is exactly the same to these two beings. The being that gives he doesn't feel attachment to the being which is making offerings and treating respectfully. Exactly the same way, the person who is attacking with great anger and attachment and harming. The Buddha has love and compassion equally to all beings. This is something which we probably think of as quite difficult, but it's something we can start to practice. That person which we feel very comfortable with, that helps us, that praises us, that we like to be around, recognize this attachment that we have and realize that it comes from our self-grasping. And in the same way, the person who attacks us, harms us, recognize that aversion and that hatred, which is also rooted in self-cherishing. So it's much more positive to have equanimity, especially to those who are causing us harm. Because it's thanks to them we have an amazing opportunity thanks to them, we have the opportunity to develop patience, compassion. So Rinpoche mentioned yesterday a Shakyamuni. Very inspiring example. Every time this Lama heard the siren of an ambulance, without knowing that person, the Lama would recite a mala of Om Mani Padme Hum, the Compassion Buddha mantra. Or if this Lama came across a beggar or a homeless person, without knowing them, would always do prayers, mantras, thinking of wanting to benefit others. So in the case of an ambulance, if we live in the city, it's a sound we hear quite often, the sirens of an ambulance. But in the same way, we can apply this to any instance of seeing suffering, seeing a sick person. If we can, in that moment, grab our mala, recite a few mantras for this person, thinking in this being, and wish them to be free from their suffering, free from their problems. These are very real opportunities to train our mind. It's going to help us a lot to begin to change our ordinary attitude. So there's countless opportunities in our life, in our daily life, which we can transform into the condition of practicing Dharma. So we recite the Buddha of compassion, Om Mani Padme Hum. So often we recite this mantra, we can recite it thinking of these countless situations of suffering. And when we come across situations of suffering, remember the mantra and recite it. So Rinpoche mentioned many things. So towards the end of the teachings yesterday, Rinpoche mentioned the need to realize or to see things as if they were like a dream. So in the Buddhist teachings, on the one hand, we need to develop love and compassion to avoid causing harm, avoid negative actions. And then on the other hand, on the other side, wisdom. And these two we should bring together. So all the teachings contain these two methods, compassion and wisdom. So regarding the wisdom aspect, the wisdom we refer to is the wisdom that realizes how things exist. So we begin by realizing that the way we perceive things is completely wrong, completely false. And it is the cause of all of our problems, of all the suffering. So yesterday Rinpoche mentioned a quote from the Lama Zopa. So I don't remember the quote exactly, but it went something like, due to the fabrication of ignorance, the appearance of phenomena arises. The way we see things as existing is influenced by this ignorance, or created or painted by ignorance. And with intelligence, with wisdom, we can eliminate this wrong view. What we perceive as something so real, so solid, is in fact created by ignorance. It's fabricated by ignorance. In the same way we perceive that enemy, which in fact was just a shadow. The other analogy Rinpoche mentioned was like a dream. So we really see it, so we see our reality, it's so real, so solid. The roof, the pillars, the floor, everything we perceive as something real. It doesn't appear as like a dream. If we were dreaming and we knew we were dreaming, the things would appear, but we wouldn't believe them. We would see them as a mere appearance. So right now, everything that appears to us in this venue, in this room, doesn't appear as in a dream. It doesn't appear as mere empty appearances. So with this example as seeing things as in a dream, we train our mind to see everything we perceive. The people here, these tankas, these images, everything we perceive, everything that appears to us here, we see as appearing independently, existing from their own side. So right now, if we're dreaming but we don't know we're dreaming, then everything appears real, as it does now. In the dream, we believe it is real. All the people, all the things that appear. So in the dream, like now, if we don't know we're dreaming, we believe it to be real. All the people, everything that's happening, we believe is real. Then when we wake up and we realize, oh, it was a dream. It was only a dream. Then we realize that it wasn't so solid, it wasn't real. So when I'm dreaming but I'm not conscious of the fact that I'm dreaming, everything I perceive in the dream appears as real. However, in the moment I wake up and I realize what I was perceiving was in fact just a dream, so that experience is something we've all had, of the dream, of believing the dream to be real, and then the moment we wake up realizing, oh, it was only a dream. So we can use this example to help us realize emptiness. So right now, maybe we're in a dream or maybe we're not. But everything we experience, we experience as something very real. So as Lama Zopa said, if we use our capacity to analyze and investigate, and if we investigate that independent existence which appears to our mind, it is something that's false. This is not easy, but it's something that if we analyze and we investigate, the way things appear to us, that false appearance is just exactly the same as a dream. So imagine a dream where we dream of this venue, all these people are here. I'm laying in my bed. My consciousness is in the dream state. There's karmic imprints in the mind. There's different conditions which gives rise to this dream, these appearances in the dream of these people. I'm asleep, I'm seeing this venue, these people, And whilst in the dream, it is as real as it is now. The people, the experiences I have in the dream are as real as when I experience it right now awake. However, it is a mere dream. I'm in my bed. It's just a mental creation. So even though there is, in reality, nobody's there, but in my mind, I'm perceiving a large venue, lots of people, and we have these experiences of pleasure, of pain, we've experienced different emotions. All this goes on in the dream, when in reality, there's no one there. There's nothing there. So this dream of a venue, lots of people, different emotions, etc. This dream's the cause of this dream arises due to the different causes, conditions within our mental continuum. So we have this experience of the dream, and then we believe it to be real. We grasp at it as true. So this example of a dream, if we apply to our daily life, to reality, and we examine our life, in our life we have different experiences, different perceptions. In fact, it's just like a dream. Our consciousness has different imprints from the past, karmic imprints, which determine our experience. We're lots of people here. Every one of us is experiencing a different venue, different world. We might think this is the same place and we're all seeing the same thing. We're all experiencing the same experience, but everybody is experiencing their own individual world. It's like we're all dreaming. Everyone has their own distinct dream. So when we start to look and analyze, try and find this I, it kind of just disappears. This solid I, this solid reality that we perceive is just fabricated by ignorance. It's a fabrication of our mind. So through wisdom, we can start to see how things really exist. It would be like realizing that we're dreaming. It would be like that moment when we're just about to wake up, we realize, oh, it was only a dream. In a dream, we can see things, terrible things. But if we know it was a dream, then there's no reason to be afraid. So this phrase, like a dream, is to realize that everything we experience is something fabricated by our mind. Just like a dream. So in Tibetan we say, refute this inherent existence. So there's lots of different reasonings to refute this inherent existence. And there's lots of scientific experiments in the world which we can also use to prove this fact, with quantum physics, with the neuroscience. They start to take apart this solid reality that we grasp at. When we analyze with minuscular detail, this solid reality starts to dissolve. So in Buddhism, the meditation on emptiness is very similar to the scientists, but it's just the first step. Intellectually understanding. That's the first step. So based on that intellectual understanding, the more we analyze, that solid reality starts to dissolve. The emptiness of the things. So the second step, which is even more important, is to meditate, to focus our mind on that object of emptiness without distraction. Once we've analyzed and understood intellectually the object, we need to place our mind on that object of emptiness. So we use our reasoning to realize that the object is empty of inherent existence. Once we've understood that, meditate on it. We meditate on it until we experience it directly. And it's that experience which is going to purify our mind, purify all our mental afflictions. So I think we've gone over time. Oops, sorry. Oops, I wanted to leave half an hour for questions. So maybe just one question, then we'll leave it here. Can't hear the question. So yesterday when Lama Zopa Rinpoche gave us the oral transmission of the 3 mantras, can you explain the Buddha and the deities? Oh, so it was all a bit quick. Can you explain to us exactly what happened and what we received? So first Rinpoche gave us the oral transmission of the mantra of Buddha Shakyamuni. The mantra is Tayata Om Mune Mune Mahamunaya Soha. So Rinpoche mentioned there's various ways of pronouncing the mantra. So Rinpoche says that quite often we say Tayata Om Muni Muni Mahamunaya Soha. Rinpoche said that this is wrong. And the correct way is to say Tayata Om Muni Muni Munaye Soha. Rinpoche gave us the oral transmission of this mantra, Buddha Shakyamuni's mantra. Rinpoche said that Kuno Lama Rinpoche was the Lama who said that the correct pronunciation is Tayata Muni Munaye Soha. Rinpoche also gave us the mantra of the the deity of the pinnacle of the lotus, something which is good for eliminating obstacles. For like in the case of a monk or a nun breaking their vows with this mantra, it has the power to purify those broken vows and to protect from falling into unfortunate rebirths. And the mantra is Ompema Unishabale Humpe. Ompema Unishabale Humpe. Ompema Unishabale Humpe, this deity, I don't remember the aspect exactly. I don't know if there's an image or a photo of the deity. We can check, but Rinpoche also gave the oral transmission of Nam Gyalma, which is another deity. This one's for long life. There's three of these long life deities, White Tara, Amatayus, and Nam Gyalma. So the mantra of Nam Gyalma, Om Brum Soha, Om Amrita Aya Dadai Soha. Om Brum Soha, Om Amrita Aya Dadai Soha. So I think these were the three mantras. I don't know if there was another one. Maitreya, I think. Yes, true, the mantra of... Rinpoche gave the mantra of Maitreya. Do I have to repeat it? It's quite a long one. But I think it's in the prayer book. I do know it off by heart, but it's not coming now. Oh, no, try, yeah, Namo Bhagavate. Namo Rana Traya, Namo Bhagavate. Adhaya Saisa, Buddhaya. Harazideya Zinda Hara Hara Macha Avalokite. Kara Kara Mahasamaya Siri, Bara Bara Mahabodhi, Mandamisa. Madamanankam Samaya Bodhe Bodhe Mahabodhi Swa. Amuni Manamaya Swa, Amuni Mamaya Swa. Something like that. Anyways, it's in the prayer book. Normally, when the lamas recite it, they recite it so fast it's difficult to catch. But you can check in the book. So we'll leave it here. We're a bit late finishing. Sorry. Thanks for everything. We'll do a little dedication. Dedicate the merits for the enlightenment of all sentient beings, and in particular for the long life of all the gurus, Her Holiness the Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, for the teachings not to deteriorate, and for their holy wishes to be fulfilled. 正月节王等经亚修尼沙派西的巴度等主些。